Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Now then, elected member allowances and expenses policy. I've got. So, staff are comfortable with the outcome of that previous item? Yeah.
Sorry, there was
you've got what you
two
need?
grants in there. I hadn't realised you had okayed the other one.
Yeah. No, it was all moved and seconded together and passed. All right. Elected member allowances and expenses policy. I would. Is there any commentary from staff before we move to questions?
No, I don't think so. I think it speaks for itself.
All right, yep, and the recommendations speak to themselves as well. There's one issue that I'd like to raise in relation to the deputation from this morning. We heard that this council, certainly by some, was expected to have dealt with this far earlier in the council term, which would have provided certainty for people considering nomination to this round of elections that we're in at the moment. Can we do something with this so that if this passes, we make sure that the new council considers it, that it's automatically put on the table for council to consider very early in the triennium, so that any work that results in is done early, and so that as we move into the next election nomination period, people have got the certainty that either we're paying allowances or we're not, particularly as regards this recommendation about the childcare allowance for community board members.
Yes, as the council's aware, staff will be discussing with the new council councillor remuneration early in the term in line with the Remuneration Authority's determination. While this is a separate matter, that's certainly something that we can bring up with the new council at the same time, and the intention is that we will do that in the first 2 months of the new term.
So if I say recommend that the incoming council consider prior to the end of 2019, you would be able to work with that?
Certainly would.
All right, so with that wording in there, I'll be happy to move this when we come to it. There are further questions? Prior to the end, prior to...
The end of 2019, that means...
Yeah, that means the end of the calendar year. Yeah, yeah. What I'm meaning is before anybody goes on Christmas holidays. I think it's clear. All right, well, prior to the end of December 2019, then, in that case. Yeah. Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you. Just a comment on that. We said recommend that they consider. I don't think it's strong enough. So I'd rather have the words actually in the allowances report now and have a future council decide to overturn them than to rely on a future council considering them. But at the moment, it only says recommended that they consider it. That doesn't even mean that a report's going to come, because if the future council don't want to consider it, it just will never come. So if we're not going to put the words actually in now, then I think we should have a decision of council which says bring a report so that the council will consider it. Like actually specify, make a decision to bring a report on the childcare allowance, rather than just recommend that they consider it.
I think that's good. Yep.
Because that's not strong enough. I mean,
so bring a
personally,
report.
I'd prefer that the words actually went in there for community boards.
So it's bring
straight up.
Yeah, requests a report to the incoming council prior to the 31st December 2019, recommending including an allowance for childcare.
That's what I would prefer. Yep.
Yep. Requests staff report to the incoming council prior to the 31st December 2019, recommending
that they include the childcare allowance.
Recommending including an allowance for childcare. Yep.
Could I just correct you? You can't instruct the recommendation from staff. You want a report from staff, and they will make their recommendation based on the best possible advice they can give you. So and in this case, it will probably be what you want, but you can't have a report instructing a recommendation, because actually you're not following appropriate decision making.
So if we changed recommending to regarding, would that work? All right.
Okay. In that case, I prefer that we
regarding the inclusion of a
put it in now for community board members
of an allowance for childcare in this policy, and that it apply to community board members only. Does that work? Which would apply to community board members only. Okay, great.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've moved that already.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've got a seconder yet. But if that fails, then I'm foreshadowing that I would like to put some wording in a resolution that actually puts the wording in the policy. Right now.
Well,
Andrew said he was moving it.
if you've got a seconder for that, then I'll withdraw what I was going to do, and we'll go with what you've got there if you want.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, we'll move what you want to move, and Phil will second, and we're good to go.
So, Joe, is it easy enough to add those words in?
Yep, I'll just go and get the determination.
And then that would require the future council to overturn that, if indeed they chose to.
And if we're looking at, you know, trying to encourage younger people to stand, then I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not for councillors, it's not for us, we're paid enough.
Okay, just to add that in, can I just clarify with the council, the Remuneration Authority determination sets out a childcare allowance and the process the parameters of it, including must not pay childcare allowances to a member that total more than $6,000 per annum per child. So just clarifying that that is the policy that you'd like included, that is the allowance that you'd like included in line with the Remuneration Authority determination?
But for community board members only.
Yeah.
So should we specify that in the resolution?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
for community board
request
members
our
only, but the
represent-
wording that Joe just gave us, should we
Yeah, but the
specify that in the
wording-
resolution?
Do you want me to go and give some words?
Where are we going with this?
So amend the draft policy to include the childcare policy as per the Remuneration Authority's determination,
Yep.
which would apply to community board members only.
So amend the policy
That'll lose me several votes.
to include the childcare allowance as per the Remuneration Authority determination,
But that.
but which would apply to community board members only. Does that reflect correctly? Yep. Phil, you're happy with that? Perfect. Thank you. All right.
Up here. Childcare is 6.1.4.
Yep. Nice. All right, so that's been moved and seconded. Now, there weren't any further questions on this, were there, Tim?
I don't have questions on the childcare because I'm quite totally supportive of that. My questions are around the training allocations. And so the training allocation is $4,000 per councillor, because at some stage a wee while ago we talked about bundling it all into one pot, which I was opposed to. So I'm just clarifying that in 8.14 or 8.6 there's a discretionary allocation of $4,000. Is that correct?
The direction that we got after the informal discussion was to keep the policy aligned with the previous policy with regard to that, and that if required, the incoming council could reconsider this at any time and may look to make changes.
And as this document states, in 8.8, that chairs get an extra 2,000, so their allocation would be 6,000 to chairs and 4,000 to councillors.
Up to, yes.
Yeah, up to. which is, I didn't agree to that, so I won't be supporting.
As per the last
I realise
policy.
this, yep. So I totally support the childcare, but I won't be supporting the other, so I don't quite know how I'll go with that.
So
one.
this means I'll put 1 and 2 separately then?
Well, no, yes, sorry, yes, yep.
Yeah,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. Any further questions? Aaron?
Yeah, so Joe, my question would just be around the Banks Peninsula pay. If they're community board members, I know that they're representing less people, but if they're doing as much work as Metro board members, then do we get no say in that?
Next term.
That's correct. The Remuneration Authority sets the remuneration for community boards. They did quite a lot of work over the last year, 2 years, and sent information through earlier this year that they couldn't come up with a viable alternative to cover community boards nationally, and so they're continuing to set the remuneration by way of population.
And
So-
bearing in mind that this is what we're discussing today is allowances and expenses policy, remuneration would be outside of what we're considering today.
Yeah, but for me that has a big bearing on this because the payment for a board member on Banks Peninsula is horrendously lower than the Metro ones, which I wasn't aware that the Metro ones were different depending on which board you sit on. Certainly, if you're
But we can't alter that now.
You're not suggesting an amendment that says
I'm
for
asking the
Banks
question
Peninsula community
as
board
in-
members only?
Is the authority's rule hard and fast, set in stone, or do we have wiggle room?
They have set the remuneration for community boards with no wiggle room, but as you'll be aware, to take effect after the election, they've changed the remuneration process for councillors and established a governance pool. And the council may consider, and it is a proposal to the Remuneration Authority, may consider recommending additional payments to community boards to recognise delegations and decision-making ability. Yes, to come out of the governance pool, but that, well, potentially, yes.
Or we could even out all the community boards across
It's,
the
But that's for another council.
All
Why
right,
don't we
let's
stick to the
not
substantive?
get into a big discussion about remuneration
Yeah.
pool and remuneration today. I realise that may have a bearing on people's position on this, but we haven't made that decision yet. So, and there's probably some limitation as to what type of a decision we can make, as I understand as well. All right. So, keeping to this allowances and expenses policy, are there any further questions? All right, great. So this has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate? Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'll be totally supporting the childcare allowance. I think it's very important, but I won't be supporting substantive for the simple fact that my director's fees go to, which amount to $80,000, go to the Merrill Fund, and I'm absolutely supportive of that. But my role as the chair of fee base is a lot of pressure. Its importance and significance to the city is huge, and it's changing, and what it's going through are really significant. And also with regards to finding myself as a permanent invited guest to the Land Drainage Working Party because I wasn't on the right committee was actually insulting. And here I find that my position of training is $4,000, whereas the chair is $6,000, is ridiculous. I think it should be right across the board. There are only so many committees, and the committee structure should be set up as the right process, not the numbers of committees, so you get a whole lot of chairs. I find it insulting.
Why
So
don't you move an
all
amendment? Move an amendment.
no, I'm not going to change the amendment. I'm going to leave it as it
Joe,
is.
there's something there that you might want to pick up to feed into any any discussion that the new council might have on this matter, because the matter that Tim's referring to wasn't something that I was aware of as an issue. It's probably worthy of some discussion when we next discuss this matter. All right. Is there any further debate, Phil?
No, just Mr. Chairman, I certainly support Sarah in making a decision around the community board members in terms of their parental allowance. So it just makes total sense in terms of, for us as a democracy and for us as a council who want to be inclusive and as a city to actually support this. It just is I think most unfortunate that we haven't been able to address this till now, but clearly from what we heard today from Tori as a member of the Banks Peninsula Community Board, it's absolutely essential that in fairness we support this today.
Yanni.
I actually disagree about supporting this today. I think actually number 2 and the original one is much better. Nominations have closed. It's actually not going to have any impact on the current number of candidates standing. I think if we were going to make this choice as part of this policy, it should have been before nominations closed. I think it's entirely appropriate to let the new council come in and set this policy as per the original resolution. I can't see why we should be predetermining what the policies that they would like to apply, particularly because this has been an issue that's been raised in the media and there has been a number of different views expressed on it. So I can't see why the original shouldn't apply, and as such I will be abstaining from 2.
And presumably you're foreshadowing that if this fails, you'd be happy to move the original resolution. Thank you. James, sorry.
Always a bit worrying when twice in one day I agree with Yanni. But look, I totally agree. And the real issue is, and nominations are closed. No one's made a decision to run for council or actually community board in this instance based on a childcare subsidy. As far as they're concerned, it doesn't exist. So elections are open. The voting period is currently underway. And it's all going to be over within a couple of weeks. So I would rather that the new council makes this decision. So I'll go a step further and actually vote against it, because abstaining isn't going to help revert it to the foreshadowed motion. I would support the foreshadowed motion, happy for a report to go to it, but to be perfectly frank, I don't even know why we're considering it now. Making recommendations as an outgoing council, I think is a waste of everyone's time. There's a new council coming in, let a new council make a decision. I think we are far better placed as a council to make decisions that affect this council, not try and make recommendations that affect another council.
I think Tory's deputation said it all. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if there aren't people who decided to put their names forward for this election who are hoping that we make a decision as early as we possibly can to provide certainty. We're all aware that there are by-elections that take place midway through trienniums. And sometimes the reasons for that are lifestyle reasons, particularly related to work and the cost of being an elected member in various different ways. I certainly don't support paying a childcare allowance to councillors. People that are earning the kind of money that councillors are should be able to afford to make their own arrangements, but for community boards, and it's been pointed out particularly challenging for the Banks Peninsula Community Board, it's a very different type of role, and it's a very different level of payment as well. So I'm certainly in favour of the paragraph 2, in favour of the childcare allowance for community board members. The timing, yes, it would have been good if we'd been able to make this decision before nominations closed. We didn't, but I think providing early certainty, and particularly having regard to the comments that we heard in the deputation around expectations that this council would have made this decision or decided on this earlier in the piece, I think to do this now, while it's in front of us, makes perfect sense, and I'll be pleased to see this passed today. Aaron.
Yeah, well, I do agree with what Yanni and Jamie have said on this, but I personally, for listening to this morning's deputation, for me it's not around childcare, it's around the low remuneration for Banks Peninsula board members. That is the real problem here. I've done 2 terms as a community board member in Christchurch. I have children. I am a parent. My oldest child was just turned 3 when I was first elected. So I've had young children, and never once did it cross my mind that I needed childcare allowance to be a community board member. But I wasn't on a community board that got paid less than half of what the other boards do. And that is the nub of the problem.
Thank you. Anne, and then I'll come to you, Sarah, at the end. Anne.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. I think it's the perfect timing to do this, because Tori's made the effort to get here and to talk about her needs, and that's cost her to get here today. So I think we need to validate that. And I also think that at the moment, community boards, elections, campaigns are right in the spotlight. The perfect time for people to know that there is that resource available for them, so that as they start thinking about perhaps the next election, they'll know there's that support for them. So I'll certainly be supporting this today.
Thank you. Okay, coming back to you, Sarah, to close the debate.
Thank you. So the median age of the population is 38, but only 6% are under 40 when it comes to elected members. And part of that is to do with the barriers in the way. This policy actually only relates to primary caregivers. So in fact, while Aaron didn't contemplate it, it might be because actually he was the primary worker and it wouldn't apply to someone in that circumstance. This is also in line with our submission to the Remuneration Authority and will only apply to a handful of successful candidates in the election if it goes through today. And let's face it, every single decision we have made today impacts the next council in just a month's time. Every single decision. And just to balk from one that might be a little bit controversial ahead of election when we're talking in the few thousands of dollars, I think is silly. From the district plan changes to the multicultural strategy implementation plan, from the downstream effects management plan, all of those things, those decisions we've made today, impact the next council. So I'd urge my fellow councillors to vote in favour of this today, to vote in favour of trying to get some more diversity around the table, to try and get younger people involved in politics.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against?
You putting
Oh,
those
sorry. I'll put, yeah, all right. So we'll do it separately. So I'll put clause 1 first. Oh, no, actually, I'll put clause 2 first. So all those in favour of clause 2 say aye. Aye. Against?
No.
So can I just have a show of hands from the noes? Okay, so
May I have that recorded, please?
recorded. So Yanni and James voted
Johansson.
against. And
Johansson, Kewen, Goff.
Aaron, you against as well? Aaron voted against as well. So Yanni, James and Aaron voted against. Okay, so paragraph 2 is passed. So now paragraph 1. All those in favour say aye. Against? So Tim voted against and Yanni voted against. Tim and Yanni against paragraph 1. And that's also carried. Thank you.